Hello everyone, and welcome to this IELTS preparation course. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm so excited to have you as my students and as my audience. Whether you're just starting your IELTS journey or you've taken the exam before and you want to improve yourself, you're just in the right place. So before we even dive into explaining the whole process of IELTS, I wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Sibel and I'm an English language teacher. I've been teaching English for the past few years, and throughout this journey, I've worked with students from different cultural backgrounds and learning needs. I have a diploma in English language and literature, and I'm also a CELTA certified. So, in case you haven't heard of CELTA, it's a teaching qualification which is awarded by Cambridge, and it focuses on practical, effective English language teaching techniques, especially for learners of English as a second language. So this means that I'm qualified to teach English to speakers of other languages or to non-native speakers of English. I am a non-native speaker of English myself too. So beyond that, I've always loved teaching. I love teaching not just as a subject itself, not just as an occupation through which I earn money, but I love the experience of watching students grow, improve themselves, and gain confidence throughout this process. It's really rewarding and motivating at the same time. And I'm also motivated uh, to see my students and being part of this scaffolding process because it's really motivating. So, also, there is something really special about supporting a learner. It's something really special because it gives you unique experiences. You learn how to tackle different problems, how to deal with each learner's difficulties, each learner's styles, because every student has got different learning styles, and so you have to be able to know how to approach them. And it motivates me every day and reminds me why I chose this path, why I chose to become an English teacher. Okay, so why did I open this channel? Basically, I created this channel because I know that IELTS can be challenging to students and even maybe intimidating. But I also know that with the right support, guidance, and encouragement, every student can succeed. I also wanted to create a space um, where learners like you can access clear explanations, real strategies, educational, let's say, educational aids, and to be able to apply the methodologies, the strategies, and the tips that I show to you in your own time and in your own learning difficulties so that you can improve yourself, get a higher score, and finally get the results that you really wanted. So, why did I open this channel? Why did I create this channel? I created this channel because I know that IELTS can feel challenging and even intimidating to some students. And I know this from my own personal experience as a teacher. Most of the students usually tend to have these ideas because, let's say, they don't have the right strategies to get this brand score and pass the IELTS test. So this is one of the biggest reasons why I created this course, in order to make your IELTS journey feel more clear, more manageable, and more motivating. The second reason is a more personal and a more subjective one, because as a teacher, I love helping students and I love seeing my students grow. The whole process of scaffolding and teaching journey of students is really motivating and encouraging one, and it motivates me as a teacher as well. I also love being part of a process where a learner starts to improve little by little and then realizes what they are truly capable of. So maybe this is the role of a teacher, um, as a helper and as a guider. So all this scaffolding process where support is built step by step through the teacher is at the heart of everything I do. And I wanted to bring that same mindset and same mentality into this course. Finally, I wanted to create this space or this e-learning platform or e-class, you can call it what you want, where learners from all over the world can access practical, not only IELTS advice, but ELT advice in general, more clear explanation, more encouraging support without feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, or alone in the teaching journey. I know that not everyone has access to higher teaching content and where they share preparation, or they are not able to hire a teacher because they don't have the economical background to hire a personal tutor. So my goal was to make something accessible, empowering, and at the same time supportive to students from all different backgrounds. So, whether you're aiming for university admission, a visa, or simply self improvement, I created this course with you in mind, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. Most of the times, I get questions from my students like, why does the IELTS exam matter so much? Or why is it such a big deal? Or should I even bother taking this exam? And my answer is that IELTS opens doors, and it opens doors to so many fields. Whether you want to study at a university, work in an English speaking country, apply for a permanent residency in the UK, maybe you want to get a visa. IELTS is one of the most widely accepted English language tests in the world. Over 1,000 institutions recognize IELTS, and they recognize it and almost set it as a prerequisite in order to be able to be accepted in their campus and institutions. But IELTS is more than just a requirement and a certificate, let's say. I think it's also a real opportunity because it shows that you're prepared to live, work, and communicate effectively in an international environment, in an English speaking country. It's a proof that you can function and talk confidently in English, both in everyday institutions and in academic or professional settings. But even beyond the test, preparing for IELTS helps you grow in all key language skills, And these skills are speaking, listening, reading, and writing. These skills you'll use for your life, in your whole life, whether is it in your school, it's in your country, it's in your job, and in your personal relationships, in your personal everyday conversations, in your transactions. So taking the IELTS isn't just about passing a test or, let's say, maybe getting a good grade to get accepted in a university. It's also about investing in your future, unlocking new opportunities, and building a more confident version of yourself. So, what's more? And here's the most important thing I want you to remember. And this is a piece of advice, let's say, that I always share and reshare with my students. And I will do the same with you, is that you can do this. And I know this from my experience as a teacher because the IELTS is not about being perfect. No one is perfect. It's about preparation, trial and error, and gaining confidence through this learning journey and learning how to show what you already know. And remember that the best investment you can ever make in your life is for yourself. Preparing for IELTS is more than just studying for a test. It's about committing to your growth, building valuable skills. You build valuable insights and take one step closer to your dreams. And I really believe in this because I also saw IELTS as a personal growth for my personal development as a teacher and back at the time when I was a student. And it's a personal challenge that I suggest, and I think everyone out there should get a taste of this. For the International English Language Testing System, and it's a standardized test which is designed to evaluate how well someone can use the English language, and especially in real world situations. So, how well a speaker is able to use their everyday English in everyday situations, in your everyday conversation, and in your everyday transactions. So it can be situations like studying at a university, working in an English speaking environment, or you may have decided to move to another country where English is the official language. So you need the IELTS in order to prove them that you are able to speak English among interlocutors, whether it's in your workplace or in your university. But beyond that, I think IELTS is not just in another English test that you take. What makes IELTS unique is that it is accepted by more than 10,000 organizations and institutions around the world, which includes universities, immigration authorities, companies, and even governments. For example, you may want to apply for a master's program in Canada or in Australia. So a university there might ask for an overall IELTS score of 6.5 or 7. And even if you're planning to move to Australia for work, the immigration office may require the IELTS score as part of your visa application. So I'm not sure for visa applications, but I know that if you want to study at a university abroad, they want the IELTS as a prerequisite. So it's a must-have in order to enter this university that you have been dreaming of becoming part of. So whether your goal is to study abroad, to get a job, or to start a new life in an English-speaking country, IELTS can be the key that opens your doors. And that's why preparing for it seriously is so important. It's so crucial. Okay, now that we understand what IELTS is and why it matters and why it's so popular, let's talk about how the test is structured. And the next question maybe is, how does IELTS actually test your English? Now let's break down the test format together. It has 4 sections. These are listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So the listening part consists of 4 sections, and you will be asked 40 questions in 30 minutes. The reading consists of 3 sections. Here you have 40 questions again, and you have 60 minutes, 1 hour to answer the questions in the reading. The writing tasks consist of 2 tasks, which again consists of 60 minutes, 1 hour that is, and the speaking part consists of 3 parts, which lasts 11 up to 40 minutes. Now, bear in mind that you can take the test on a paper or on a computer, but the speaking test is usually done in person, face to face with the examiner. You cannot take the speaking test online. Okay, there are 2 types of IELTS tests. The academic IELTS, which is for people who want to study at a university or in a professional setting. So maybe let's think that you want to study or apply to a university in the UK, in the USA, or in Australia. And then you have to take the academic IELTS in order to be accepted in that institution. The general training IELTS is for those who are migrating or applying for work or training programs. So they need these basic English language skills in order to be able, let's say, to speak among their interlocutors and in their workplace. So make sure you know which versions you need, okay? So you choose the academic IELTS because you want to do this. I told you what, and you take the general training IELTS only for work. Okay, how does IELTS band scoring? So IELTS uses a band scale from 1 to 9. So 9 obviously means the highest, the best. You'll receive a band score from each section: listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and then an overall band score, which is the average of all the 4. For example, Band 9 means you are an expert user, which means that you use and are able to communicate in English almost like a native speaker. Band 7 is a good user. Band 6 is a competent user. So many universities require at least 6.5 or 7 depending on the course or the country. One important takeaway for you here is to know that most of the universities requires from students to score at least 6.5 or 7 depending on the country and the region. Now, you might be thinking that 6.5 or 7 sounds high, but with the right preparation, it's absolutely achievable. So don't be stressed, don't be overwhelmed. You can do this. And the good news, these kind of scores, so 6.5 and 7 score, is within reach for most learners. but with consistent practice and the right strategies. All right, now that you know how the scoring system of IELTS will work, I think it's time to dive into the test itself, starting with the listening section and then the writing section, which will be the follow-up, which we'll see in the following slides. Okay, again, before we proceed with listening and speaking skills, a course objective again. So in this course, you will learn the IELTS speaking test, discover effective strategies that I will offer to you, practice real questions with examples, get self-study tools to improve every day, and gain confidence for personal development. And this is something which I highlight uh, too often because I think it's a really important element. Okay, so in the IELTS, the speaking part consists of three parts. Let's see the first one here, which is introduction, of course. It's almost like an interview and it lasts 4 to 5 minutes. This part is a short interview with the examiner, between the examiner and the candidate, and you will be asked simple questions about these familiar topics. So topics like your hometown, your hobbies, your studies, your daily routines. So for example, the examiner might ask you questions like, what does your daily routine consist of? And then you start explaining with examples, giving details, or the examiner may ask you to describe your hometown or to describe them their hobbies. And again, you explain, giving details in order to support your arguments. One tip here that I usually suggest for my students is that you try to be natural. And what I mean for you to be natural is that you shouldn't memorize speakings, phrases, or anything that you find either online or in the books that might be related to you. So try to give answers from yourself, and of course, avoid yes or no questions, because if you answer the questions with yes or no, the examiner, it will give them it will give the impression to the examiner that this candidate uh, is not able to answer my questions, and therefore he or she cannot speak English. And this, of course, will result in a bad mark, unfortunately. You can use simple vocabulary with clear vocabulary, and of course, try to speak confidently. Now, let's see some further details and examples about the speaking part one in the next slides. So, the aim of this part, as I have mentioned earlier, is to relax the candidate and help them get used to speaking in English. The examiner asks personal questions on familiar topics such as hobbies, work, studies, daily routines, or hometown. And again, it lasts up to 5 minutes. So think of this part as a warm-up exercise. The examiner asks the candidate questions, you answer them with examples, explain them a bit, and then it's the part which I usually call that the examiner and the students get to know each other. So what is the structure of this part? So the examiner will first ask you to introduce yourself. So you tell them your name, your surname, what you study, if you're studying. You tell them what do you study or in which region do you study. You can tell them why you chose to read or to study in the specific region. For example, you can say that you chose to carry out or to conduct your studies in the UK because I like the British culture, I like the accent, and these were one of my main motives in which I choose to study in the UK. Then they will ask 2 to 3 simple questions about familiar topics, and usually in this part there are 3 sets of questions on different topics with 3 to 4 questions per topic. So 3 sets. So within these 3 sets, if you are asked 4 questions, you will have to answer 12 questions in total. Okay, but don't be overwhelmed. They're quite simple. Okay. What does the examiner is looking for, or what is the examiner expecting from the candidates here? They will see your fluency and coherency. So can the candidate keep talking without too much hesitations? Okay. And one tip that I usually suggest here for my students is that you practice your speaking at home on your own, or maybe you try to keep recording yourself and then listen to your recordings. How does your speaking seem to you? See if there are any mistakes, if there are any parts which you don't like, and which parts you wish you have said or expressed in a better way. Okay, I think recording yourself is really important for speaking. Lexical resource, of course. So, is the vocabulary of the candidate varied and appropriate for the questions which I have asked? Grammatical range and accuracy, are a range of structures used correctly? And pronunciation, is the speech clear and understandable? So here you can use simple vocabulary because you want your speech to be clear and understandable among the interlocutors, and specifically here you want your speech and your speaking to be understood, to be understandable by the examiner. Speaking part 2. In part 2, you get a task card with a topic. You have 1 minute to prepare, then you speak for from 1 to 2 minutes without stopping. So this part is called the long run. That's why it's called the long run, because you have to talk 2 minutes without stopping, without any hesitations and interruptions. For example, you might be asked to describe a favorite book, a favorite person, or a person that you admire. This could be your mom, your dad, or famous people, celebrities, or footballers, or musicians, or a place that you have visited. So, one tip here is that I usually recommend to my students is that you use a structure which consists of an introduction, description, and examples. So in this 1 minute preparation that you have got, again, I suggest that you write down and keep your notes and any ideas that come to your mind in that time, you keep it down, because as soon as students start speaking, they tend to get stressed and unfortunately forget what they have to say. So keeping down notes will definitely help you. So try to keep speaking. Don't stop too early. That's why this is what I mean. Don't stop too early, because it's the long run, which means that you have to talk 2 minutes without stopping. Okay. So don't stop, because you have to talk 2 minutes continuously without any pauses, interruptions, and hesitation. This element, of course, here is quite crucial. So that's why the IELTS system have given the name the long run, because because the examiner wants to see if the candidate is able to talk at length. And this is also what I mentioned earlier about coherency and fluency. You will be marked upon these concepts, and they want to see if the candidate is able to apply these concepts in their conversation. So no attention to small grammatical mistakes. So what do I mean here? Let's see in the next slides. Okay, it's part 3. What I mean by no grammatical mistakes here is that so while you're speaking, if your conversation is quite good, so for example, you have using good enhanced vocabulary, you haven't repeated the same words again and again, you haven't answered with yes or no questions. You have talked 2 minutes straight. And if you have made some small grammatical mistakes, the examiner won't be disturbed by the minor grammatical mistakes that the candidate has made, because it's not important. What they want to see here is your ability to speak at length, and fluency, coherency, and your pronunciation, of course. I would also like to give further examples here for speaking part 2. So maybe the examiner asks you to describe your favorite person or a favorite book. So what can you do here? So you can explain your favorite book. You can tell them why do you choose to read this specific book. You can say I like reading this specific book because of the writer. You can talk about the writer as well. So maybe you choose to read Shakespeare or Samuel Beckett or Jane Austen. And then you explain a bit why do you usually read this specific writer's book. Maybe you say I choose to read Shakespeare, or I usually read Shakespeare's poetry because it's full of irony. It consists of witty comments and undercurrent. It has got many implications. Or you chose to read Jane Austen because she focuses on realism, and realism is a genre that I like. Obviously, there are so many things that you can talk about, but I just want to give you examples. I always give examples because I think they're really helpful to my students. Speaking part 3. This part is a discussion, and again, it lasts 4 to 5 minutes. So the examiner will ask deeper, more opinion-based questions in comparison to your speaking part 2 and speaking 1 topics. For example, if you have talked about travel in part 2, now the examiner might ask you why people travel. So it's a nice question, and then you start explaining your arguments. Again, you give examples and details. And why I mention this again, because we give examples and then give details. This is important because we want to highlight and support our statements. Uh, okay, why people travel, or if you have talked about tourism in part two, now the examiner might ask you a question like how tourism affects the environment, or why do you think tourism is important? Because in this part, like I said earlier, it's more opinion based, so they will ask you for your opinion, for your subjective point of view. Or another question would be, how does tourism affect the economy of a country? Okay, so more abstract and opinion based questions. So I explained these two concepts in another slide. We will see them later. Okay, tip. Use linking words like however, on the other hand, furthermore, or in addition. Or if you're comparing two different or opposing ideas, then you use linking words like some people think, but I believe that. Okay, you have to use these linking words in order to link your ideas, and of course, because we don't want your speaking and your sentences to be abrupt, and when you use these linking words, your speech sounds more natural and more smooth. Okay, that's why we usually suggest and highlight these linking words for the students, because they are really important and helpful for the delivery of your speech. And it's also what the examiner is looking for. Okay, you will also be marked upon speech and coherence, and they will see how able is the speaker to deliver a speech more coherently and more fluently. um, Okay, you support your answers with reasons and examples. Try to stay calm and focused. It's a chance to show your thinking and communication skills. Of course, it's really important. Okay, next slide. So you try to express your opinion based on the questions that the examiner asks you. And then, like I said earlier, you support it with examples and phrases like, in my opinion, I believe that, to my thinking or to my perspective. So if you are asked a question like, how does tourism affect the country? Here, the examiner asks you your personal point of view. So here, all of these phrases are really helpful, and then you explain, so to my thinking, or I believe that the economy is really important, and it affects a country in so many different ways. For example, it affects a country for its money. So when people travel, they spend a lot of money, so this helps this country for what? So you explain it in your own terms, in your own way. So these questions asked here will probably be related with part two, of course, so be cautious of what you choose to talk in the part of the conversation. So it's almost like a follow-up uh, part here, because if you're asked about tourism, your hobbies, or if you're asked about your hobbies in part two, it is highly likely that you will be asked something, at least something about your hobbies in part three. And if you're asked about travel in part two, and then at least one or two questions will be about hobbies or economies. Okay, so abstract and opinion-based questions. So I chose to analyze this in this slide because I think they are important. And from my experience as a teacher, I have noticed that I have noticed that the concept of abstract and opinion-based questions are a bit more difficult and, let's say, a bit open, and because students cannot quite understand the meaning, what does the abstract mean? That's why I chose to highlight it. Students usually ask me, so teacher, so what are abstract questions, or what is opinion based, or teacher give us an example of an opinion based question, so, or how do I deal with these kind of questions? Or I have also noticed that even if students don't ask me questions, I know that they haven't understood the meaning of these exactly. So let's have a look at them together. Abstract is questions. They are open-ended. They involve critical thinking. There is no wrong or correct answer here. And they are totally subjective. And opinion-based questions, they are almost similar. They are subjective again because they ask you about your point of view. What do you believe about a specific concept, about a specific question, or a specific item? So the speakers, so your point of view, your beliefs, opinions, choices, and experiences are called into question, and it what triggers the examiner at that time. Okay, I hope that these slides are helpful. I just wanted to highlight these two concepts here. And so, speaking tips for students. So I chose to set this slide in the end of all the three speaking parts because I think they are applicable to both speaking part 1, speaking part 2, and speaking part 3. So let's see them. So don't try to memorize your answers and be natural, the tip that I have suggested in speaking part 1. Because even if you do it, even if you memorize an answer or anything, the speaker will understand it, and you will sound. First of all, you will sound very mechanic, and unfortunately, the speaker won't give you a good mark. Practice speaking aloud every day. Yes, this is quite natural and helpful. I have suggested this earlier in this video. So try to record yourselves your speaking. It's really helpful, and give feedback to yourself. Record yourself, check pronunciation and your fluency. How can you improve? Which parts of your pronunciation you don't like? What would you like to change? So do this and practice it at your own pace in your own time. Expand your answers with reasons or examples, and avoid one-word answers. Always explain a little more. And I have also said, and I will explain it again, one-word answers are really tricky because it gives the impression to the speaker that this candidate cannot speak English, and therefore it will result in a bad mark. Okay, I hope these slides are helpful and applicable, all the tips for my students. I really want to motivate and help you, and this is why I have designed this for you. And then in the next slides, we will see the writing section. We have arrived in the writing section. Here I have given you a general overview of the writing tasks, and let's read the slide. So as I have written here, in this section, we'll take a closer look at the IELTS writing tasks, which many learners find challenging. Yes, indeed, that is true. Most students find the writing task challenging, and this is the part from where they usually lose most of their marks. But no worries. I'll share you information, examples, and some tips that I usually recommend to my students, which they usually find useful both with my online and my face-to-face courses. So, with practice, you can definitely master both writing tasks and achieve a higher band score, which will be reflected in your total score. So, every task that you do is important, and every mark that you lose is important because all of this will be the sum of your band score. Let's quickly dive into the writing sections. The IELTS writing test lasts 60 minutes, 1 hour, and includes two tasks. There are two different types of writing in the IELTS tests. These are different depending on whether you're taking the academic and the general training version. Let's go through both writing tasks now. So the academic writing wants from students or expects from students to summarize and describe data in a clear and objective way. So what do I mean here by clear is that you use clear and understandable vocabulary for sure, and there are some specific usage of vocabularies which are used for describing data, and which you should use as well when you analyze and write a writing like that. And of course, you reflect this in your paper in an objective way, not in a subjective way. You don't write your own opinion here. You write what you see in the data in an objective, not biased ways. And what is data here is that data can be either a graph, a chart, maybe a table or a map of the world, or generally a process. So based on this data, based on the data that you are given, you analyze it in an objective way. And then there is the general training version, which expects from students to write a formal, a semi-formal, or an informal letter. So, what tips do I usually suggest for my students here? One tip is to describe the main trends, not every detail, of course, because there's a word limit. The academic is 150 words, so you have to bear that in mind also. And the general training is 250 words. They don't want you to write much, neither less. Okay, because both, if you exceed the word limit or if you write below the word limit, this will be reflected in your score again. You have to use the right vocabulary, the right or the appropriate vocabulary here. So the appropriate vocabulary for describing and analyzing the data are words like increase, decrease, escalate, de-escalate. That you can, if you have a chart, you can say that we see a heavy rise, or that prices have remained steady since 2020. Okay, and of course, keep it well structured. When we write writings, one important tip is, and very important, is that you keep down notes. So you keep a note of your intro, of an overview, and the details, which will give you a blueprint of what you have to follow and write down next. So this will Both help you with tracking down your ideas, not forgetting your ideas, because students tend to forget what they have to write. And it will give you a well structure of how you have to analyze your data or write the email. Okay, the writing task 2 now. So here you write an essay expressing your opinion or discussing a problem. So you will have a theme like education or economy, maybe travel or globalization. So, and what they require here is from you is your point of view. So you will write an opinion essay. So types of questions include whether you so maybe not only types. So maybe you will be, for example, you will be given, let's say that you will be given the problem or the issue of globalization. And then your problem here will be, and the answer that you have to that you tackle upon will be whether you agree or disagree. Maybe you will write the advantages and the disadvantages. Or you will have a problem like globalization, and you will have to offer a solution or an outcome, a resolution to this problem. So what are the tips for this part here is that you spend 5 minutes planning your ideas again. This is important because it gives you a structure of your essay. So you write down in the introduction, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. So the body paragraphs are usually 2 up to 3 paragraphs only. So if you write 3 paragraphs in the main body, so 3 paragraphs main body, the introduction, conclusion, you will have 5 paragraphs in total. But because you have a word limit, I think you should stick with in the body paragraphs with 2 paragraphs, because you cannot exceed the word limit. You have to use academic vocabulary and linkers such as firstly, moreover, furthermore, in conclusion. And you should avoid informal words like a lot of, stuff, things, because remember you're taking the IELTS and you have to show that your vocabulary is elevated and sophisticated. These words are the words that we use in everyday English in the conversation, and you cannot use it in the IELTS and especially in the writing section. Okay, one clarification here, which is really important. So the 20-40 minute divide is a strategy. It's not enforced by the examiner to the candidates, so you don't have to follow this rule, but because task 2 is more heavily weighted than task 1, students should spend more time on it. And that's why they suggest the 20-40 minute divide, but it's not necessary. You can apply this according to your own needs and difficulties. So if you find task 1 difficult, you may devote more time on it than task 1, but remember that you have to finish both tasks in 60 minutes, in 1 hour, or maybe you can split both 2 tasks within 30 minutes, so 30 minutes each one. So managing your time well is of course crucial in success and in the writing sections. So are both IELTS writing tasks mandatory? Of course. This is really important because students tend to ask me this a lot of. So in the IELTS writing section, both tasks are mandatory. You have to take both of the two writing sections. So you have 60 minutes in total to complete both tasks. You must complete both tasks because skipping one will seriously lower your score. I included this information in the slides because students sometimes get confused and they ask me questions about whether they should finish both tasks or whether there are options. No, both tasks are mandatory. You have to finish within 60 minutes. Mm, so bear that in mind and don't get stressed out because some students are stressed or under pressure during the exams and that's why they skip it. No, you shouldn't skip it. You have to take both of the two parts. Task 2 counts for twice as many marks as task 1, so it's especially important to manage your time carefully. So what is the upshot of this? What happens if you, or in other words, what happens if you skip a task? Let's say that uh, during this time you're under pressure, and even if the teacher has warned you, because of the pressure and the anxiety that you had at that time, you skipped or forgot to do a task. So if a student only completes task 1, they will unfortunately receive a very low score, sometimes even band 4 or less. Oops, very important. If they only do task 2, their score will also be penalized because task 1 is part of the full evaluation. How to improve your IELTS skills. So how do students improve their IELTS skills in general, or how should a candidate get prepared? Daily habits, of course. So daily practice and the everyday suggestions and recommendations that tutors and teachers suggest you every day. And yeah, and that you apply in your own daily life. Record yourself speaking and then analyze it. I think it's really helpful because it gives you the chance to see yourself and improve yourself because you don't want a professional to see you uh, because maybe you're not ready at that time yet. So this gives you like a privacy maybe before you expose yourself. So recording is one tip that I usually recommend to my students because I think it's quite helpful. Write essays and ask for feedback or self-check with a checklist. Learn common IELTS vocabulary. Read sample answers and note useful phrases. Adapt or improvise the learned information. So, what do I mean here by adapting or improvising the learned information? So, maybe you have seen a useful phrase or something similar to that in the internet, in a book or in a newspaper, and maybe you want to include it in your essay. So, what I mean is that you adapt it in your own style. So you improvise a bit from the original text and you adapt it according to your own style using your own vocabulary because you don't want to seem like a copy or an imitation. Okay, it should be like it's your original or your own work. Some free IELTS resources that you can consult and which offer really a wide range of activities and practices that you can use. You can visit them and see what each one has got for you. Obviously, there are so many facilities and activities that you can do and redo and which are especially helpful for your daily practice as an IELTS candidate. So, final recommendations. Ever tried, ever failed? No matter. Try again, and fail better by Samuel Beckett. I really like Samuel Beckett. It's one of my favorite English poets. And you don't forget that there is no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs in order to succeed in life and in the IELTS. So genuinely, I would really like to thank you for completing this section with me. I hope you feel more confident and prepared now that I have shared all of this information, tips, strategies, and helps. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask anytime me. I'm here to help and answer your questions. And if you are enjoying this course, I would really appreciate a quick review, a feedback. It could be anything because your feedback means a lot and helps others too. So keep learning, and I hope to see you in another lesson. Hello again, students, and welcome back. So in these short videos, I would like to guide you on how to get the most out of this course. Firstly, take your time with the 1 hour long tutorial. Of course, while you're watching and seeing the course, you don't need to finish everything in one sitting because first of all, it's too long and you have to pause, you have to take down some notes and revisit the parts that you find most challenging. Or maybe you may have misunderstood some concepts and you need to revisit the material in order to check and see if everything works out for you. So that is why I have also included my PowerPoint presentation, which is, I think, 34 or 35 slides where I try to explain everything in detail. And secondly, make sure to download the PDF presentation which I have provided because it includes a summary of the key points and examples. And I also recommend and say things which I know from my experience as a teacher. So you may get some tips from there too. And finally, don't hesitate to leave a question or a comment under this lecture because your feedback is really important, and any feedback, any kind of feedback that I get from my students is really helpful and motivating. And this happens not only in my online courses, but also in my face-to-face courses. So when I get feedback from my students, it really motivates me as a teacher. And also, don't forget to check my presentation again. I will upload the PowerPoint presentation with the referral link. So in the updated version. So if you're interested for further lessons and courses, don't forget to do that. Now, let's have a look at some common IELTS myths, which some of them are true and which, of course, some of them are not true. So one of the most popular, let's say, misconceptions that I hear from students is that you need to have a British accent in order to get a high score or a high brand, which is, of course, not true because, first of all, the IELTS is designed for students of non-native speakers of English, and this is totally wrong. You don't have to have a British accent in order to pass the IELTS exam. And the second is that you can't improve in a short time because people always think that you have to have a lot of time in order to improve yourself to get like proper amount of practice, and in order to reach, let's say, this high brand score and to pass the IELTS. No, of course, not true, because with the right strategies and practice and study, you can pass the IELTS test within a short period of time. And then the third is that the IELTS is only for students. Again, absolutely wrong, because people who want to work abroad or are thinking for migrating and so many other reasons take this test in order to get this passing mark and move, let's say, to another country or study abroad. So it's not only for students. Anyone out there who wishes to participate in the IELTS exam can, of course, take part. So not true again. Strategies for students who suffer from anxiety. So if you're feeling nervous about the IELTS, I wanted to remind you that, of course, you're not alone, because most of the students usually struggle from anxiety. And I think that it's completely normal, because when I was a student, I tended to get nervous really. So I was trying to find ways of dealing with it. And then I applied this method, and it's the method which I definitely recommend to my students. And so, like, try like to prepare in small, consistent steps. Don't try to cram everything all at once. Set a realistic schedule and try to stick with that. So remind yourself that say to yourself like things like, so I have to do this like 3 or 4 days in a week, and try to have this framework and try to stick to that. Tell yourself that I'm going to do this and that there is no bouncing back. And trust me, it worked, and it really works, because practice helps you reduce stress levels. And finally, I usually tell to my students that you should be confident and that you should believe in yourself. And then the students ask me questions like, so teacher, how do we stay confident because when we're anxious? And I tell to them that confidence usually comes from preparation and study. So as long as you study, you're prepared, you feel that you're ready to do this, and trust your learning process. Because every time you practice and you study, you're moving one forward at a time. And of course, remind yourself that you're doing it for your self confidence and for your self belief. So basically, I would like to thank you genuinely for taking up this course. I hope that the main tutorial and these extra 4 videos have helped you better understand what the IELTS exam involves and what it expects from the students. And I hope that you approach it more confidently. Don't forget to download the PDFs, of course, and stay tuned, because I'll be adding more helpful content in the future. If you enjoyed the course, please consider leaving a review. It helps me and other students as well. Again, your feedback is really important. And finally, if you're interested in more IELTS tips, strategies, and support, maybe some additional methodologies which you can apply, check out the upcoming courses which I will be publishing. Until then, good luck with your studies and keep aiming higher, and don't forget to love yourself and stay confident.